Hello, ni hao. Welcome to Interview with Ms. Panda. I'm your host, Amanda Schoen-Blodgett. My special guest today is Anne Martin Bowler, author of All About Korea, stories, songs, crafts, and more. Annie is the author of 15 books, and 14 of them are children's books. And today she's also an educator and a traveler. Today I'm delighted to have her with us and share her book, All About Korea. Hello, Annie. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you. Well, we would like to talk about your book, All About Korea. Why did you decide to write a book on Korea and also the culture of Korea?
Well, my two youngest children are adopted from Korea. They are 23 and 17 at this time. And I had no idea when we brought them home. I have always loved cultures. I was a sociology major in college, so I love people and cultures and have traveled quite a bit. And my one son lives in Indonesia, just a little background. But I began to realize how very important it was for them to understand their culture. Because people look at any person and they kind of assume some kind of knowledge. They assume when you see a child that looks very Asian and generally very Korean, that they will have at least some amount of knowledge when they head off to college or any place, you know. And I just think for them to be comfortable in their own skin, they needed to know something about their biological roots. And besides, it was a lot of fun. So we were very lucky to live in the Sacramento area that at the time when they were young had a very active community. It was called Friends of Korea was the name of the organization. And a wonderful woman pulled Korean Americans who were so generous with their time and knowledge and into organization. And we had this wonderful school that happened all the time on Sunday afternoons. And so they were able to, you know, spend time with Koreans. They were in Korean drumming groups, fan dance, dancing groups, cooked food extensively, played games, sang songs. So they performed. I mean, it was just a really wonderful experience, mainly because they got to really get to know a lot of really nice Korean Americans. So
right. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, you know, you have actually very good support group for your children who are adopted from Korea.
Yes. In fact, one of my son's best friends is also an adoptee from Korea from that group. That's how we met them. And I just got an email from her this morning that we might go to a Taekwondo demonstration this weekend. So that's the kind of thing that happens because of this. You find out about things that are going on that you can participate in if it suits you, you know. But he's his very good friend. So it's been wonderful. And so then I've written a bunch of other books, and Tuttle is the publisher of All About Korea. And so at some point I heard that they were doing this series, and I'm like, well, I want to do All About Korea if I can. And they're like, absolutely, you can do it. Because that was my third book for Tuttle. And it was really wonderful because the timing of it was great. My son was kind of in middle elementary, like 10 years old. My daughter was 16 at the time. And so there was a lot of, I wanted it to be a very hands-on book with crafts and songs and cooking, and so that kids could take it and use the book, not just read, but use it and make things and do things with their families. And so my son was very artsy, so he helped to make all kinds of the craft activities, some of which we learned at the Korean school. And so should I show you some of this? Is it okay if I show you some of those now, Amanda?
Sure, of course, yes.
So in Korea, one of the things that they do is fan dancing. And here is a fan that actually my daughters used, and if you flip it around like this, and you know they wave them, it's quite beautiful. And so from the book, this is the little project that my son Jake came up with, was these just paper folding but with feathers and little fans. So kind of a fun one. Another one, in Korea, they have a very long history of kites. They would have kite battles actually long ago, and I don't know if you know this, but what they did, and it talks about this in the book, and here's the shield kite that is very strong. And all the men long ago would go out and have this battle with kites, and they would on the kind of holidays. It was a holiday activity, and what they would do is the kite that stayed up in the sky the longest was the winner. But what they did is they would often they would put little bits of glass on glass pieces on the string, and so they would cut each other's kite strings. And
Yes.
these kites can swoop and dive, the really big ones. So this, of course, is just a little model of one, but you can have kids can run with it behind, and I've seen many children do this and fly around the house and have a grand time. So this was the little model that Jake came up with to make a very simple little kite, and that's another one of the projects in the book.
Does it have any kind of significant meaning for, flying the kite, and maybe during the New Year or something? I remember, and because you cover so many different interesting and informative topics in your book, so is there any special meaning for flying a kite in addition just having fun?
Well, yes, and I think some of it has changed over time, but today sometimes people still fly kites. Kite flying is quite popular in Korea, and what they do on New Year's is they'll put their wishes on the back of the kite, write it in, and then they'll fly it up as high as they possibly can in the sky, and then they kind of say a prayer and let it go. So
Okay.
it's like sending their wishes up into the heavens.
Yes.
And so here's another one of those little kites that another child actually made following Jake's model. So,
I like that.
so that's one of the things. There may be other significance. I think the strength of it, I think the Korean people are a very strong people, and the fact that they love this is their style of kite, I think that has some significance for them too. They've had, a lot of challenges with, trying to be an independent nation over time.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
do I have time to show another project or two?
Absolutely. We would love to see that. Yes.
Okay. So another one that I think is very fun is that, way back Korea, children didn't have Toys R Us to go to, and a lot of people didn't have very much money. And so they had to make their toys, as children all around the world did, honestly, from very simple things that they had around. And so the game that we now call Hacky Sack, one of the places it began was in Korea. And what they did is, this is like a little circle in the middle. It's actually a washer, but way back they would use a Korean coin that had a hole in the middle, but I just made a lightweight washer and then wrap yarn around it, although I know you can use feathers as well, and you toss it up, kick it up into the air, and try to keep it up as long as you can. And it's kind of a game. You can kick it back and forth between different kids or people. And here's one actually I've unraveled. This is unraveled the yarn, so it's even fluffier, like kind of more like the feathers would be. So it holds up pretty well, actually. So
this could be a great summer activity, outdoor activity, so the kids can go out and have fun. It's a hands-on activity. I think that's one part very important about your book, All About Korea, is that you have a lot of hands-on projects in the book. I think that's very entertaining for the kids and for the whole family, actually.
Yes. And so that was my goal, really, was to make it not just this boring, dry thing, but where there's really things they can actually do with kind of ordinary materials like paper, and you don't even have to put the feathers on if you wanted, but you can color it and make it. And this one, another one that is I really like is that in Korea they do a lot of paper folding, and it's called origami in China, but in Korea they call it paper folding. And I actually learned how to make these little boxes at the Korean school the Friends of Korea school. We all made them, and we had stacks of these boxes because the kids had so much fun once they figured out how to do this, that they just were happy to, make them more and more. And you can glue them down. This one isn't glued down, but you can glue it down, and it actually makes a very nice little box that you can use it. My kids have used it for presents that they are giving at Christmas or whatever, and you can get, the fancy origami paper that's, Christmassy colors and stuff. But Jake we worked on this, and these were some of the other models of things that he made. So those are just a few. I think there's a number of other projects in the book as well. But one of the other fun areas was, so Jake was like 9, 10 when the book was being written. My daughter Sarah was in high school, and she was really into cooking. She took a number of culinary arts classes and was always cooking. And so there's a number of recipes in the book. And one of them, to make bulgogi, which of course is their very special barbecued beef. We did this, and with the help of some Korean friends, and she came over, and we cooked together here, and this one actually, where we first ate kimbap, this is a real kid favorite in Korea. That we had some Korean exchange students that stayed with us for a summer, and they taught us this. And really all it is, and we still eat this like all the time, and we had it, just last week. It's like, if we're going to have bulgogi, we always turn it into kimbap. And you do seaweed and then rice, and put all kinds of other vegetables in, and then some meat, and you roll it up. Now the way that, and this is the fancy way with using the seaweed roll, the bamboo rollers, but the way the Korean kids did it, that was so fun, and that's the way we do it, is we just get the small seaweeds, and this stuff is all on the table, and you just make it yourself, and it's a very simple roll up. And they're like, oh no, we don't do that fancy thing, we just do it. So that works for us Californians. And so then you can put in it exactly what you want. It doesn't have to, so if a kid doesn't like the vegetable, they don't have to have it in there. They can, put kimchi and the meat and the rice and leave it at that, or the other vegetables that you happen to have that go in it.
Absolutely.
So Sarah helped, we did a bunch of, there's some holiday recipes in here for some special food. So we really had to work hard to figure out, even though we had cooked, it's one thing to cook, in a cooking class like we did, and eat it and enjoy it, but it's another thing to come home and make it yourself properly. And after doing this, then they're kind of our real recipes. They're ours for home,
Yes.
So it was so fun to have them both feel a part of it. And then the final thing that was so neat about it is writing this book was that it was so neat, because as I'm doing research and talking to Koreans, Americans or Koreans in Korea, about what would be good to have in the book and the best representation of Korea, I'm learning this and really making a point to share that with my kids. And so for a couple of years, it was like we really were talking about Korea just all the time, in very formative years for them. So it very much brought Korea home, to our family. And for that, I am so grateful. And then I'm equally grateful because I feel like for other families, then this book can provide some of that same, whether you're a Korean family that, the whole family is Korean, or a family like ours that has come to Korea through adoption.
Yes.
It gives them a way to very tangibly know about the culture.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting. You mentioned that you actually brought the Korean culture home, but also I can tell you actually outreach to the Korean community so you can learn authentic culture and food and all kinds of like the drumming, you know, that's a very traditional Korean performing art. And I also want to say that, you know, your kids were, you know, participating in the whole book writing processing, your book, you know, all about Korea. And then I think that was really wonderful. And then I think because you cover so many different topics in the book, you talk about folk tales like the blue dragons and white tigers, and, you know, you talk about Taekwondo, you talk about the recipes, and then also the festivities. So basically, when your kids were doing the project, the book with you together, were they excited to be a part of it? Seems like they're very excited about it. And then that's why they helped you with the project and things like that, right?
Oh yeah, they were very proud, you know, and happy to have me working on this. And we've gone to Korea and visited some, and that has been a really neat thing. Stayed in some Korean family homes, and that's been really, really wonderful. So yeah, no, I think they get that it's an important piece. And you know, people are asked all the time. It amazes me sometimes how the dumb questions people ask. And so adoptive children who don't look like their parents, they have to be armed with reasonable answers and kind of an assurity of who they are. And that can be hard to do for some. It's hard on some kids, and harder than I understood it was going to be before they came home. And you know, so we've done our best, and to make them to be well-adjusted, happy people. But to have this kind of in their back pocket, I think, is a really important thing.
Why?
And I encourage other families. Maybe they wouldn't, you know, be in a town like ours, but at least, you know, there's the internet now. There's so many different ways, and if you have the wherewithal to travel, there are groups that go to Korea, you know, just to visit, is hugely cool thing to do. It really, 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 really neat. And Korean people are so friendly and so kind that we've had great trips there.
Fabulous. And then I think that leads us to our next question. Do you think it is important for adopted children to learn about their heritage culture, and why? I know the answer is positive, but I think for parents like you have done so much, you have been through the journey. What are your advices for parents, you know, who are going to start a journey? How do they start with this journey with their adopted children?
Well, I would encourage them to look around and see what's in their community already. And you know, like it can be any kind of way. Like our dry cleaners, a lot of dry cleaners tend to be Korean Americans, and our dry cleaners are our really good friends. And they've, you know, just, you know, you go there every couple of weeks, and they have followed them, and they want, you know, so it doesn't have to be this formal school thing. It can be just looking around for people in your community and then talking to them and trying to reach out and make friends. But yeah, it is really important for all the reasons I just said. It's just, I think you just have to do what you can do to help them. And I would really advise, don't ignore it and think that they're not going to have some wrinkles in their journey if they don't have some of this stuff in their head and heart, because they're going to go away and people are going to assume that knowledge, like I said before. And if they don't have it, they don't know how to use chopsticks, other Asian people are going to go, what? You know, where are you from? You know, I mean, there's an assumption of knowledge, and so they need to go eat in Korean restaurants and Asian restaurants and learn the food. And frankly, my kids adore Korean food. They love it. We cook it all the time. And I've heard that from so many adoptive families. They're like, you know, we eat more white rice around our house than I would ever want to eat, but it seems to suit them. And I think biologically it's what they're used to. So, you know, we need to eat what digests well for people. So it's that kind of honoring that I think is very important.
Absolutely. I think that's a great advice. And then also I think, like you said, the food, the culture, the events, connecting with the community. Basically, you don't want the children, adopted children, feel their own heritage culture is foreign for them. And they need to not only understand the culture they are living in right now, but also still keep the heritage connection. I think that's definitely quite important. So I think for the parents, I think they need to outreach to the community and bring the culture home, and then go out to experience the culture the children are coming from. And I think in addition to All About Korea, you also have many other children's books that have multicultural themes. I especially would like to mention one that is Adventures of the Treasure Fleet, China Discovers the World. It's a story about Zheng He. For my audience who are interested in Chinese culture books for children, I think this will be a great adventure story for our young readers. Would you talk about this book a little bit for us?
Sure. Well, I love history. I think history is so fascinating, and I stumbled upon this piece of history and brought it. I talked with the publisher at Tuttle about it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a great piece of history. Yes, let's do a book." So I actually worked with him on the book, which was very interesting and fun. But it's a number of years ago the Chinese explored, and the map, there's a map, I don't know if you can see this map here, but here's the map on the inside cover of the book, and it shows the journey that they took, and they went all the way to Africa on one of the voyages, and two of the voyages, and they may have actually circumnavigated the globe, but we did not. I didn't make any conclusion about that. What I wrote about is what we know historically truly happened for sure, not based on anecdotal information, but based on the written facts from that past. And so they visited all these countries and brought back, it actually was a very peaceful journey. They wanted to get to know people in other places. They wanted to bring back the best things. So they actually brought a giraffe back to Africa, which probably wasn't a very kind or good thing to do, but it was an amazing thing to do. They brought back spices from Indonesia and just everything they could find to bring back to the Emperor of China. And they encountered giant storms. I mean, it was truly an adventure. And so I tried to summarize the very long, history of these 7 voyages. And the way I did it is I kind of made it a 2-level book. I did a historical fiction on the sidebar here all the way through. So every page, so it's a shorter version of the story. And then across the bottom, I wrote extra facts. So it's kind of a 2-leveled book, so that if you're curious, if a kid's going, well, wait, what's going on here? I don't understand. The answer is right down here on the bottom. And so a second grader could, read or have this read to them and understand it. But then this book will last up to 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade with all the information across the bottom. So it was very, very fun, and I actually love the way it was illustrated. I don't know if you can see the illustrations. They're beautiful, and it was a woman from Taiwan that did the illustrations in their colored pencil. It took her about 2 years to color these drawings. I mean, it took a very, very long time. So it's a fabulous piece of history, and I've been pleased that it was kind of overlooked in comparison to Columbus and Magellan, but just more recently, it's at the 500th anniversary of the voyages that it's beginning to get a lot more world play as truly some of the most adventurous explorers that time period that we've ever had, in that earlier time period of just. I think about setting out and not having, all of the tools we have today and just going. What bravery these people had. I mean, bravery. So it's a great piece.
I was definitely sorry. I was I was definitely very delighted to read about the book. So I was like very surprised. I said because Zheng He is such an adventure in Chinese history, and then it came to me like, well, here's a book, talking about Zheng He. So I thought, it was definitely quite very interesting. So I heard like this book is also translated into Chinese language. Is that correct? And it sells very well in China.
From what I understand, and here is the Chinese version right here. So I have some here in the States. Yeah, another publishing company bought the rights to it, so it's exactly the same, layout, same everything, same size. And yes, so it's very fun. And I've actually, people here in the States have been really excited. So I bought, a case or two when they first came out, and I'm almost out of them. So I should probably get some more. I just have a few left. So, but yes, very, very fun to think that Chinese kids are reading this book that was written here in America about their history, So
what an adventure! It's wonderful.
Yeah, it was pretty darn fun to write this book. So
that is really interesting, definitely. And then also, do you know if there are parents who would like to get a Chinese version of the book? Where can you find it?
Yes, there is. I will send you a link. There is a wonderful bookstore. Oh, it's the Asian American Book Project out. It's something like that out of the Bay Area. They have copies of it. Yes,
fabulous.
And wonderful people. I've done a lot of work with them, and I will send you their email, and then you can post that with my link.
Yes, yeah, we would like to share that with our audience. I think a lot of parents, they probably would like to read the Chinese version to their children, and I think that would be a great, very valuable resource. And last but not least, as an educator, you share with us why it is important to expose children to different cultures through books, travel, or attending cultural events.
Yes. Well, good question. I really, our world is so diverse and with people, but in the basics, we are all very much the same. And that's one of the things I try to tell people is, like, I use musical instruments when I visit with kids a lot because I love music. And I don't know if you know this, but every culture around the world plays music of some kind. Now, it might be a piano, like we might have grown up playing here in America, or it could be drums in Africa, or any combination. And now, as the world is shrinking, we're all switching off and playing each other's instruments. It's not so designated anymore, like, okay, you're from Europe, so you're going to play the violin. That's just not the way it goes anymore. But to appreciate and understand one another's cultures is just so important because, let's face it, there's a lot of conflicts going on around the world. And my goal is to raise my children to be smart and well-educated and to be able to go out and be a peaceful influence and a good influence on our world, which needs well-adjusted, happy people who are going to do their part to make the world just that much of a better place. None of us are going to solve all the problems, but no. So that is such a key thing to help your children to do that. Number two, it's just downright fun. I mean, I think it's fascinating to see what people are up to and what they do and how they do it. And you learn things from other people, like how to do things or simply, or just, different food tastes, or, whatever. It just brings an appreciation and a fondness to your days that I think can't quite be matched.
Yes. Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you so much, Annie. It's definitely so true. I think every time, a child opens a book, with a multicultural theme. I think that opened the door for them to learn more about the world. And then I think your books definitely are leading them to a totally different adventure, through your stories.
Yes, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And will you send me the link to your blog and stuff so I can keep following what you're up to?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Annie, for sharing your book, All About Korea, and also the Adventures of the Treasure Fleet Discovers the World book with us. I think it's wonderful. We'll definitely post the links to your books on this interview. And we'll hope to see more books from you in the near future. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye. For my audience, I would like to thank you for watching this episode of the interview with Ms. Panda. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. 再见，我们下次见。